こんにちは、ハリケーンフットボールです。今回の教材は、リーズユナイテッドの田中碧に関する動画です。リーズユナイテッドは、プレミアリーグ第12節で、アストンビラと対戦し、先制しながらも終盤に逆転され、2対1で惜しい敗戦を喫しました。田中碧は、アントン・スタックの脳震盪によって前半23分から途中出場したものの、71分に途中交代したことが、リーズファンの間でも物議を醸しています。リーズファンのワンリーズチャンネルでは、レビュー動画の中で、この交代について批判し、田中碧がリーズの中盤で素晴らしいプレーをし、他の選手ができないプレーと役割をしていたこと、特にディフェンダーとアタッカーの繋ぎ役となるコネクターと表現し、そのコネクターがいなくなる意味の大きさを話しています。実際にどのように話しているのか、チェックしてみましょう。
So you're looking at that second half and you're thinking, right, now I was really impressed with the midfield. We're actually giving them a hell of a lot of credit. Apart from maybe Longstaff, to be honest with you, I didn't think I had a great game, but I thought it was blood and thunder at points from Longstaff, which is what you need in games like this, because that's what we got results in against Bournemouth, Everton, Newcastle at home, and that's kind of what you want. So I understood that with Longstaff. For me, Tanaka had to start the game. I think the second half gave evidence to that. I think with how their profiles in the midfield land in Tielemans and the likes of Emi Buendia, I think Tanaka can compete in there from a physical stance as well, and he's got that technical ability, which is better than any other Leeds midfielder, in my opinion. So I thought Tanaka should have started. I thought Nonso should have started, and or if you're not doing that, put James in. So for me in the pecking order, Brendan Harris is third out of those right wingers, because Harris is not even a right winger, although we know he works better in a little bit of space. But the second half was a big. I mean, I was speaking to a couple of mates at half time when we just went for a little bit of a break over here, and I said, look, this is massive now for Farke this half. It's huge. He has to win this second half. He has to win this game, because I thought we were good in that first half. And when you're at that point, you need to win the game, and the opposition's not on it. And they weren't on it today. Speaking to a couple of Villa fans at half time as well, a couple of my mates, we left the watch on. They said, we are absolutely crap today. We're rubbish. And obviously he's not made the changes. I personally would have looked at, and hindsight now is 2020, obviously with DCL coming on and not doing obviously great, but I thought there was maybe some heavy breathing towards the end of the first half for Lucas Mecha. I'd have maybe looked at switching that around. I'd have also looked at bringing Willian Yonto or Dan James onto the pitch. But he makes a choice to take Tanaka off after bringing him on. You see him on the sidelines speaking to Tanaka, and Tanaka's visibly frustrated, and I just didn't understand that. I feel for Leeds to be really creative, I would have liked to have seen, I think this was happening a little bit in the first half, where Tanaka was really direct with his ball playing from that midfield point perspective. And someone mentioned, he said Connor, he's booked. Of course he's going to take him off. It's like, yeah, but he's not getting involved in tackles. He's not getting in transitional moments. He's not where he's losing his head and Tanaka's really struggling in those individual duels. I thought he was doing okay. Wasn't getting involved in that many duels anyway. And for a lot of the second half after Villa scored, they kind of went into a little bit of a block, didn't they? But overall, I thought Tanaka was probably Leeds' best midfielder when he came on. Now, I thought Longstaff's passing was wayward. I thought, aside from his set pieces, he was largely irrelevant today to a certain extent. And obviously he was relevant because he put the ball in for the goal, but the set pieces were a little bit better. But I just think on the ball, he's naturally technically weaker, probably the weakest in the squad in terms of the midfield. Obviously, if you're getting Gruev out of there in terms of that comparison. But the starting midfielders, I think technically he's the weakest in terms of ball distribution. I think his ball carrying, he's got a bit of a heavy touch as well. That's not ideal. But I just think Tanaka reads the game so much better. And I wanted him in almost like an advanced 8 position where Villa were exposed in there. I felt at points Boubacar Kamara didn't have his greatest game. McGinn was kind of trying to be everywhere. He was being pulled apart by our midfield, which I thought was working. So if you're to make a midfield change, and fine, but Longstaff was the weakest one today. I thought Tanaka and Ampadu were given a lot. He then elects to keep, and it's. I don't want to keep going on about it. But there's so many moments where Leeds have the ball, and we're in the opposition half, and Brendan Aronson has the ability to release the ball. We all know it. It's the ability to release the ball. Holds, tackles. I can't. In that second half, especially the first sort of 20 minutes, that second half, I can't imagine how many ball recoveries Villa got off him. Because I know he's recovered. I think the ball recoveries in the Forest game was 10 and upwards for Brendan Aronson. This is the issue as well. It's when they get the ball off him, there's then a real vulnerable moment of which it's 2-on-2 at the back. And that happened twice in the second half from Brendan Aronson. Holding onto the ball too long, way too long. and you wait until the 80th minute to bring on Nonto, Peru, who else came on? It's just all reactive. It's all throwing mud at a wall and seeing what sticks. And it's all the same stuff we know, that when we're losing, this is how he configures games. This is how he figures it out. He just thinks, right, I'm going to do that. And we did a countdown till the 70th minute. We did a countdown till the 70th minute on the watch along, almost like a funny thing. So I was like, oh, he's not actually going to do it nailed on the 70th minute. Bang on 70th minute when the subs were made for Leeds. You seen Emery be really proactive earlier on, making those changes for Aston Villa. They worked. I thought Leeds was stretched. I thought their subs, and obviously they've got quality coming off the bench, but those subs still have to work. You know, subs don't work in every single game, do they? They worked against Leeds United because, as I said, Villa pressed high up. They brought more attackers on the pitch because Metro was isolated, so that they felt that they could stretch Leeds a little bit more, and that high line would work. Obviously, if Metro's just up against them by himself, Leeds aren't able to funnel and get up the pitch. But I thought at least Tanaka was getting closer to me, then brings Tanaka off, as we know. We've just spoken about that. But the generalized look at this is it's just the lack. His in-game management is awful. It's awful. And sometimes it's worked, mostly in the Championship. I think we're all aware of that. But his in-game management is really poor. Now, on a positive, I thought there was some really good individual performances today. I thought Bogle was brilliant. Goodmanson, I thought, was excellent as well. Okafor in spells was okay. I didn't think it was his greatest game. He's had much better games this season. But Rodon, I thought, was excellent. But I thought, especially wing-backs-wise, those two were brilliant. This is why I've always been an advocate for Leeds at stages, maybe playing a three at the back, because I think those two can run those lines. If they're still working in like little sequences between midfielders who are getting closer to them, I think Goodmanson and Bogle can run those lines by themselves. Obviously, with maybe like, you know, when you've got two up top, potentially that second player who might be a foil, might be in that number 10 role, someone like Noah Okafor, just off that striker to be able to help them out on either side, which I know three at the backs do when they've got two up top. It's that second player in behind just works alongside the wingers really nicely and offers options. But I think they could run the line by themselves. I think they're excellent, absolutely brilliant. And in the Premier League, I think they're both really acclimatised. Goodmanson was just superb, but I thought it was quite symptomatic of how Leeds are under Farke. Goodmanson does what he does. He gets the ball, and that should be a trigger automatically for some of the midfielders to really lance into the box. And once again, we get to a scenario which we saw at Nottingham Forest where Goodmanson gets the ball, drives to the byline, you know, carries the ball excellently well and has a really, really good touch as well, which means that he's a very decent dribbler as well, / ball carrier, gets the byline. There's two players in the box. And it's like Villa have got 6 players in the box. And it's symptomatic of it. It's just that cautious approach of not wanting to do too much because, you know, if you do go for that second goal, you might concede. But at some points, you've got to do that, especially when your job's on the line. I just thought the substitutions were just reckless at points. The Tanaka sub for me, it takes off any connector in the midfield. It takes off your best technical player. Then you bring Nonto on and Peru on. Would you not want your best connector from the midfield on the pitch with two technically able forward line players like those two? And there's a complete mesh when it comes to the substitution, not in a good way whatsoever.
次は解説です。今回はことわざなどの表現や比喩的な表現もありましたので、イメージして学習していただくと良いと思います。それでは本日の解説をチェックしてみましょ
う。Hindsight now is 2020, obviously with DCL coming on and
Hindsight is 2020は非常によく使われることわざの一つです。特に何かがうまくいかなかった後に、ああすればよかったや、こうするべきだったという時によく出てきます。この表現には、後からなら何でもわかるや、結果を見てからの意見は簡単だという少し皮肉めいたニュアンスが含まれています。視力の2020は正常な視力、よく見える状態のことであり、つまり過去のことは後になって振り返ると、はっきり見えてくる。つまり何が正解だったかわかるよねというわけです。反省や分析を語るシーンで、ネイティブがよく使うので、覚えておくと自然な会話力が身につきます。
And hindsight now is 2020, obviously with DCL coming on. And hindsight now is 2020, obviously with DCL coming on. And now I thought Longstaff's passing was wayward.
ウェイワードはコントロールが効かないや予想と違う方向に行ってしまうといった意味を持つ形容詞です。人に使えばわがままや反抗的。ボールや行動に使えば不安定やそれているといった感じです。例えばサッカーでウェイワードパスといえば乱れたパスや外れたパスという意味になります。日常会話ではあまり頻繁には使われませんが、ニュースや解説、文学作品などではよく出てくる単語なので、意味を知っておくと便利です。
Now, I thought Longstaff's passing was wayward. Now, I thought Longstaff's passing was wayward. It's all throwing mud at a wall and seeing what sticks.
スローシングスアットザウォール&シーファットスティックスは何が成功するかわからない中で、とにかくいろいろ試してみるという意味の比喩です。泥を壁に投げて、どれがくっつくかを試すように、計画的ではないけれど、何かがうまくいくことを期待して行動する様子を表します。ビジネスやスポーツ、映画制作など、あらゆる場面で使われ、皮肉っぽく言われることも多いです。日本語で言う、当たるも八卦や、やってみなきゃわからないといったニュアンスが近いです。
If it's all throwing mud at a wall and seeing what sticks. It's all throwing mud at a wall and seeing what sticks. Leeds aren't able to funnel and get up the pitch.
ファネルは、もともと液体を注ぐ、情語の意味ですが、そこから派生して、何かを集めて一方向に流すという比喩的な使い方がとても多い単語です。例えば、情報を集めて要点に絞るや、選手をあるエリアに集中させるといった場面で、ファネルを動詞として使います。また、ビジネスでは、購買までの段階的な流れ、セールスファネルというマーケティング用語にも使われたり、顧客やユーザーの行動を段階ごとに数値化、可視化し、どこで離脱しているかを分析する方法をファネル分析と言います。日常英語からビジネス、スポーツまで幅広く活用される重要語彙です。
Leeds aren't able to funnel and get up the pitch. Leeds aren't able to funnel and get up the pitch. I think they're both really acclimatized.
アクラマタイズドは、新しい環境や条件に慣れるや順応することを意味する形容詞です。例えば、外国に引っ越した時や、新しい職場、気候、スポーツチームなどに馴染んできた時に使われます。スポーツでは、新しいリーグに順応した選手。ビジネスでは、異文化に適応した社員など、グローバルな場面で非常によく使われます。トイックやビジネス英語でも覚えておきたい単語です。
I think they're both really acclimatized. I think they're both really acclimatized. But I thought it was quite symptomatic of how Leeds are under Farker.
シンプトマティックは何かを象徴しているや典型的に表しているという時に使える便利な形容詞です。例えば、チームがうまくいっていない時の失点や社員の離職などが深刻な問題の症状であるというふうに比喩的に使われます。医療でも症状があるという意味で使いますが、日常やニュースではこれは何かの典型だと批判や分析の中でよく登場します。論理的に物事を説明する際に使える英語表現の一つです。
But I thought it was quite symptomatic of how Leeds are under Farker. But I thought it was quite symptomatic of how Leeds are under Farker. And there's a complete mesh.
メッシュは網目や金網といった物理的な意味を持つ一方で、人や物事がうまく噛み合うや調和するといった比喩的な意味でもよく使われます。スポーツチームや職場などで、この選手や社員はよく噛み合っているや、相性が悪いなどを表すときに便利な表現です。噛み合うという言葉からもわかる通り、歯車のようにぴったり合ってスムーズに動く状態をイメージすると覚えやすいです。特に人間関係や考え方の一致を話すときに自然に使える単語です。この動画のシーンでは、完璧に噛み合っていると言いつつ、続く文章で、良くない意味で、と言っていることから、良くない意味で噛み合っている、つまり、全く噛み合っていないという表現として使われています。
And there's a complete mesh. And there's a complete mesh.
いかがでしたか？田中碧が素晴らしいパフォーマンスをしていただけでなく、他の選手にはできないプレーができ、特にオンザボールでのテクニカルなプレー、試合を読むプレー、攻撃を仕掛けていく起点となるプレーなど、今のリーズの中でも、最も重要なプレーヤーと最栄そうなプレーヤーを、交代で外したことが、とても考えられないといった感じでした。ファルカの解任論が、間違いなく最も高まっている状況にさえなっていますが、個人的には、田中碧のことだけを考えると、新しい監督になって出場機会が増える保証はないので、監督の交代は何とも言えないですが、ファルカのままでも出場機会は増やしていくだろうとも思えるので、ただただ次の試合でまた良いパフォーマンスを見せてくれることを期待して、楽しみにしたいと思います。本日もご視聴いただきありがとうございました。またすぐにお会いしましょう。